Hey, what is up, guys? This is Shannon with Bare Metal Tech. In case you can't tell, Alphacool is in the house. Well, in the lab, in the man cave, or as my wife so lovingly calls it, the basement. So, with that, we have a lot of stuff from our friends over at Alphacool. We told them, hey, I talked to a few friends over there. I was like, hey, guys, I'm looking to, test this new Galax card, which has the water block for it. And I had some old water cooling gear, but it was like, you know what? I really want to start this off with starting this channel, something really new and nice. So I hit up the guys over there at AlphaCool, and they were like, sure thing. And next thing you know, I get a tracking number. Not necessarily 100% sure what was showing up. Saw I figured some water cooling parts. Being American, didn't really understand the whole kilogram thing, so saw that the package was like, I think it was something like 22 kilograms. I was thinking, like, 20 pounds, cool. So probably be like, radiator, block, whatever, just to get everything sorted. Well, I'm American, I don't know kilograms. And it turns out when I went to lug that box off of my porch, first of all, let's just say this is not everything Alphacool sent. It would have been a hot mess to put it all out here, but I have everything from quick disconnects, some extra fittings, tubing. I am going soft tube. I know everyone loves hard tube, so do I, but soft tube for my test benches, because if any of you have ever had to pull apart a hard tube system, not fun. So if I'm going to be swapping parts, which by the way, that's where this Praxis bench comes in, thanks to my buddy Darth Beavis. He sent that over so that we can have something cool to show off the new water cooling gear for you guys. This is the case test bench you may recognize from the fractal design video using for fitment right now. That will definitely be going away for something much more higher end. And so with that being said, I went to lug that package off of the porch. Needless to say, it was 50 plus pounds. For those of you not familiar with kilograms, turns out for every kilogram, there's a lot of pounds. So 20 kilograms is heavy, 22 kilograms, something like that it was. But I digress. This is this is the meat of what they sent me. And I had told them, I'm like, hey, I like the idea of when people make, like whether it's EK or whatever, they make liquid cooling systems in a box. So in other words, all the selected components, I like to see what the user experience will be, because a lot of people maybe want to get into liquid cooling, but the vast array of parts is so insanely just so cluttered that you just have to look at it and go, okay, like I know what I'm doing with liquid cooling parts, so it's not an issue for me. But imagine if, I'm sure many of you are probably really adept with liquid cooling as well. Imagine if you're a novice. Imagine it's your first time and you're like, you're a kid who's building his first PC and you see all these awesome showcase builds and you're like, I want to build one too, right? I want to build an awesome looking, some people RGB lit, some people just blacked out, but maybe some nice highlights to show off the tubing, stuff like that. Where do you start? And that's where I really like that people started coming out with these kits, or what I call liquid cooling in a box. Thermaltake does it. A lot of people do it. Well, with the Alphacool Eissturm, I think it's Eissturm. If I spelt it, or if I pronounce it wrong, I'm sure I'll talk to the guys and they'll probably laugh at me about it, but that's okay, because a lot of their stuff is really oddly named, as we'll get into. So Alphacool Eissturm. This is I believe the Tornado variant. So it's a copper, 60 millimeter thick, which is big. Once again, I don't know all the conversions, but figure 60 millimeters, that's a lot. So, you're talking a pretty thick radiator, which we'll show shortly, and it's 240 mil long, has a tube reservoir, all that stuff. And then we have two more simpler options. So this is a full DIY setup in a box that'll cool your CPU and is expandable. It has a quick disconnect inside, which we'll show you as well. Then you have the more simpler plug and play, the what are called the Ice Bear. I believe it's Ice Bear, Eisbaer. So hopefully it's Ice Bear. Otherwise, I'm saying it completely wrong. And well, what can I do? These are more your AIO style. So they're all pre-filled. You just pretty much hook them up and go. Now, some of these do actually have also the quick disconnect so that you can actually expand the loop accordingly, because both of these are 360 mil units, where this is a 240 mil unit. So what I like that Alphacool is doing is a lot of their pre-built stuff, it's not like an Aizotech build, because Aizotech unfortunately has patents in place, so it makes it really hard for a lot of people to be able to create custom liquid cooling solutions as AIOs, the most reasonable place for AIOs for fitment would be to put the pump right in the block that goes on the CPU. Well, unfortunately, they have a patent on that, and they've taken full capability to chase after everyone that has done it. They've went after Cooler Master, Swift Tech, you name it. So that kind of puts us as enthusiasts in kind of a bad place, because that means people need to innovate new ways, which might not be as effective, or you have to stick to an Asetek unit, which is not bad. I mean, a lot of them are good. You have Corsairs that are built off of Asetek for the most part. You have Thermaltake. You have NZXTs are built for the most part. Most of them are built off Asetek, so they're not bad units. But it is something that you have to consider, is that, have other options out there really is good. And what I love that Alphacool did is they didn't just take like proprietary parts. A lot of their parts, even their AIO units, have G1/4 thread, which means you can technically take like the AIO unit, like the Radiator and whatnot, and expand it with whatever fittings you want. You could swap it to hard tube. You can pretty much take it and build it up to the nines, so to speak. Now, let's go ahead. I'm gonna set these two AIO units, as we'll call them, to the side for right now, and we're gonna dig into the Tornado, because this is the guy that I'm most interested in. Because basically, when you're providing somebody, move the knife out of the way, when you're providing somebody a full liquid cooling set in a box, there are certain expectations, like picking out the best possible components for someone's build. Now, the question is, did Alphacool do a good job with this? Let's go ahead and take a look inside, see what they offer. What do I think are some concessions that they could have made better? What do I think as far as compatibility, feature set? Let's dig in and find out. And as you can see, we moved the big box out of the way. It's gone, because what I was really surprised about is, normally when you get like I don't want to say AIO, I almost said AIO, but when you get a liquid cooling kit in a box, normally it's got just like everything kind of tossed together. This literally looks like well, actually, you know what? Let's show the box. It's got some packing paper in it. Otherwise, it literally looks like you had taken a box like this, went to a liquid cooling store and said, you know what? I want this part, I want this part, I want this part, put it all in a box, and then shipped it to me. So that is a good sign, because when you have the capability to basically select out the best parts, and you can see they're all retail packaged parts, means that you're not just getting whatever specialized junk maybe they made for one kit. These are all legit parts like that you could buy separately. And that's really cool. It even has a list, a bill of materials on the side that tells you exactly what parts you're getting. They even tell you on their own website when you look at it. They show you exactly what parts you're getting, so you can actually research it on their website and compare this kit versus buying all the parts separately from Alphacool or from where their storefront is. And you could also, I think Alphacool now is like in performance PCs, things like that. I'll have to confirm that. They do include, and what I like also is, while someone who's adept at liquid cooling like myself has no problem putting this together, they do include a manual, the Tornado manual, and this thing literally has everything about how to swap the block, like mounting the how to change it depending on the ILM style, different screws, you name it. It also tells you exactly how to connect it, how to hook up the fans, making sure that they're exhaust or what have you, depending on where the radiator placement is. This is actually really cool. I like that a lot. So that makes it really good for, once again, that novice who maybe doesn't know what parts to pick. They're also not necessarily going to know exactly what parts, how they go together, how you should build them. This is the type of scenario we get where I've seen people who, like, for instance, put on an air cooler and have the fans facing each other, and they wonder why they're getting like poor thermal performance. So having an actual manual that lays out like how to build your loop means this is going to be open for a lot more people. Now, this is not saying that other people don't do this just as well. I just haven't looked at those kits yet, and that'll probably be coming down the road. So the Radiator, like I mentioned, this is much thicker than your standard you'd probably see. I'm going to go ahead and pull this out so you can see it. This is a UT60, and holy crap, is this thing heavy. Okay, so first things first. They don't actually have a thin AIO radiator to show you guys. let's just say this thing is like over 2 AO radiators thick. So this thing is 60 millimeter. I do like that around every edge, it has inlet outlet out the top and out the sides here, so both sides, and it even has like a drain style or what have you, like a bleed you could put right there. So this is definitely a good start. Matter of fact, let's pull one of these off and take a peek inside, see what it looks like. Oh yeah, no junk. No awkward smells like you get with some radiators. Wow, even the paint finish is really solid right to the edge. I'll grab some B-roll of this for you guys so you guys can see exactly. I'll see if I can have something for size comparison. Matter of fact, I think these are the fans, and this might be an apt size comparison. Because fans standard are 25 mil thickness. Oh, perfect. This is another good one. Alphacool has been known to work very closely with the guys at Be Quiet for some of their cooling solutions and for their fans specifically. Silent Wings 3, arguably one of the best fans out there for silence and overall performance. Really, really solid fan quality. Overall, really good, but 25 mil thick. Just to give you an idea, I'm going to see if I can line this up the best I can. 25 mil thick. It's not even half the thickness. You're 5 millimeters short of being half the thickness of this radiator. So you're going to slap these fans on. And while it's not a super dense FPI, or fin per inch, this is going to put some work to those fans because this is a thick radiator. What I do like though, by having this thick radiator, as long as you have clearance for it, like on the front of your case, I would not imagine a 60 mil like this is going to fit in many mid towers in the top. You're going to be interfering with some RAM unless you have low profile RAM not stuff and you have nothing to worry about. But otherwise, you could potentially interfere with RAM or the motherboard components accordingly. But if you don't have those kind of clearance issues, this could definitely be an amazing setup for you. Otherwise, mounting it in the front of a case, like especially a small form factor, something like a even mini ITX case that can fit a 240 rad of that thickness, would easily be able to cool a GPU and CPU loop. Obviously, it wouldn't be optimal, but it would cool it really well because of how thick, how much actual surface area you have with these fins. So that's really cool. I like that they're using the Silent Wings 3. Obviously, they branded it themselves, but it still says Silent Wings 3 on it and powered by Be Quiet. So that's a plus. Now, they did opt for smaller 10 millimeter ID tubing, and I don't think that's necessarily a major issue, and I'll explain why. Because with fittings, one thing is, you know, I've done like custom liquid cooling over the years. I've had all the 1/2 inch and all that stuff, and going with a 10 millimeter ID, you're barely necking down G1/4 thread, the internal diameter of G1/4 thread. You're necking down, I'm guessing, 1.5 mil. So 1 millimeter, maybe 2 at most. That's not going to impede flow enough, really, that you're going to have a problem because you have far more restrictions going through your blocks where you're going through those dense fin arrays. And that tells me that we've got something that will work really well, and it won't be as hard to deal with as far as tube routing because you won't have big, fat, massive tubes that you've got to fit through tighter spaces. It'll all... Grab Mr. Knife here. We got to open the tubing. This tubing will be much easier to manage, in my opinion. I haven't worked with it yet, but I have gotten a love for, like with working with acrylic tubing and things like that, working with the smaller tube because I have not seen any ill thermal effects, and it gives you the ability to route it much more effectively. Oh yeah, this tube's nice and bendy. Doesn't kink unless you really push it past, like, if you go with a really tight radius, you could see it start to flatten, but it still tends to hold well enough that it won't be an issue. I mean, like a tight radius 90 will do okay. If you're pulling a U, you'll probably want to give it a little more room. Yeah, you can pull a 4.5 inch, 5 inch U bend without any deflection of the tube. So that's pretty strong showing for the tubing. So that's going to be a plus. I can't wait to actually outfit this bench with some of this stuff. That way I can show you guys how it performs. This is going to be really cool. Then we have a 24-pin jumper, which also houses the Y splitter. So we have a Y splitter going from like the fan header on the motherboard to your 2 fans so that you can control both concurrently. And you have a 24-pin adapter. This is for jumping the power supply. This is for leak testing, which you should always do with a new liquid cooling. I don't care if you've done 100 liquid cooling builds or it's your first one. Always leak test components. Hook up just your power supply 24 pin with this connector and have your pump hooked up. Let the liquid run for a while, because you will be surprised how many times some small defect in an O-ring, something can happen. You can cut a hose while tightening a compression, or even with hard tube builds. No matter how good you are at deburring your tubes, occasionally you'll kind of hook up or you'll tear a O-ring or possibly push one out of place. Next thing you know, it's leaking all over your, $1,200 2080 Ti or your, $300 1060. It doesn't matter. You don't want to risk your components over something silly like just trying to expedite this getting done. Spend the time to do it right and to leak test this. Alphacool is giving you the right parts to do so. This kit also includes 2 threaded 90-degree tubing adapters. And what this is this is a 90-degree with a compression on the end. So instead of having a 90 with an open G and a quarter, which means it'd be even longer, they went ahead and integrated it all on. The threads on this feels really solid. I mean, these things go on without a hitch. These things don't feel like they're binding. They don't feel like they're catching on any of the, whether this be powder coated or anodized. I'm not 100% sure. I don't think it's aluminum. I'm pretty sure these are brass fittings. Solid quality rubber O-ring. It's got a good amount. It's got a good amount of restriction when you're turning it. It does not feel super loose. It doesn't have that rocking like you get with some fittings. This thing feels pretty damn solid, and that's another sign of decent, really good quality. Decent or really good, I should say. And like I said, unless you're getting really cheap components, got things from like EK, Swift Tech, what have you, are gonna be probably just as solid. I haven't used all of them. I've used a lot of EK components over the years. I've definitely used a lot of Swift Tech. I have a lot of friends over there, and those things just work. I mean, but the thing is, this is about introductory liquid cooling and what these guys at Alphacool are doing. This is their premixed coolant. It is called Cape Kelvin Catcher. So it's clear, which means you could pretty much dye this if you wanted to, or you can run different coolant. I prefer running coolant, not just distilled water, and I'm sure I'll get some blowback on this, but I do not agree with running just distilled water, or even worse, just distilled water with like a kill coil. Yes, it can be done, but the thing is, unless you have exactly everything right, any contaminants, anything like that, and then you get your light contamination, unless you're running like completely opaque tube, completely opaque blocks, where there's no chance of it, you're going to eventually get some algae growth. You're going to run the risk of galvanic corrosion, even without aluminum. Everyone thinks like aluminum is like toxic to your loop and that's going to cause your galvanic corrosion. That's not necessarily the case. The thing is, when you have galvanic corrosion, that means anything on the anodic index. So anything when you're looking at an anode chart, in other words, what metals, or this is specifically speaking to metallurgy, but any differential in metal on the anodic index can cause galvanic corrosion. The likelihood is far more when you're talking going from something like nickel and copper to aluminum. That's way far away, but even nickel-plated blocks and copper can cause a form of it if you don't have corrosion inhibitors. It just may take longer. If you have stagnant parts in your loop, which is why it's so important to get like air bubbles out, because if you have any stagnation, any bubbles hanging out like in the edge of your radiator, things like that, those can eventually cause corrosion at the edge, and then you get that seeping or leaking like you've seen in older radiators, I'm sure, at some point. Having a coolant that is designed well, you won't necessarily have to worry about that. That's why I'm such a big proponent of using like either a coolant that is a concentrate or a coolant that is already pre-bottled like this. What that does, that eliminates that possible headache, because running just distilled water, it's great. I've done it, but too many things can go wrong, and too many things I've seen definitely go wrong. I mean, I've run distilled water for years, but you run into those small issues. You run into, over time, blocks get gunked up with whatever it may be. As long as you run a pure coolant, some of the pastel-based or some of the opaque coolants can even clog up your system. So you want to be careful with that. I tend to stick to the more clear coolants because I just don't want to deal with the settling and crap like that like I've seen happen. That's not saying all of them do it, but I've seen too many cases of it that it becomes a problem. But I digress. We've gotten way off course here. Basically, I do like that they include coolant because that means that, let's say, once again, you're the novice. The first thing that's going to happen is if you don't read about it, which some people might not even know where to go, whether it be a forum like Extreme Systems, Overclock.net, what have you, or even Reddit, like you can even go and learn a lot there as long as you get people that are helpful, which is another story for another time. But you can pretty much just, like, someone may turn on the tap and just fill their loops directly out of the tap, which is like disastrous because there's so many different, whether it be minerals, things like chlorine, fluoride, stuff like that, that who knows what could happen with the tubing and whatnot. The other part is having these pre-selected components means you're less likely to get some generic tubing like that might have plasticizer in it and all that stuff that can possibly cause problems in your loop. Now there are three more parts in this kit. One that I found kind of interesting, it's like a generically branded tubing cutter, which is actually kind of neat, but it's a little plastic guy with a, I don't want to stick my finger in there, that'd probably be really bad, but basically it allows you to cut your tubing easily. It's not even like Alphacool branded, and I really don't care. It's something they included because they thought, like, you know what, people are going to need to be able to cut this, and they don't want you running around trying to use your household scissors and whatnot. They want something that you can make a precise cut on, because if you ever used like household scissors to cut tubing, not necessarily a really awesome time. So I'm gonna take a look at what makes this baby go. So we're gonna take a look at the block first, then we'll get to the cylinder reservoir. Ooh, the black one, I like that. Okay, so this is okay. Alphacool, I gotta be straight with you guys. Alphacool has this an issue with naming things starting with EIS, EIS, I should say, EIS. So this block is called, and by the way, just so you can see, the Alphacool Ice Block, XPX CPU. So this literally is like I walked through Alphacool's warehouse and just pulled the parts I would want to use for a liquid cooling build straight into like a shopping cart and just like checked out with them. Because it's not like any special different packaging. These are all just retail parts, and that's cool. So you got your G1/4. I do like that on the inside of the threads, they marked them in and out. That's actually really cool. So it's not like a marking out here. You could actually customize, paint this block, do whatever you want to do. And you could still see by looking inside the threads at the base here, right where the water flows in and comes out, you can actually see the in and out markings. That is cool. It's got, I'm guessing this is nickel plated copper base plate. It also has various mounting brackets for Intel, AMD. The only thing I think it doesn't include is Threadripper, which I actually got a mounting kit separately from them. It also includes a syringe of Lucycool or Alphacool thermal grease, along with instructions specific to this block. So, wow, okay, there's a lot there that I've heard this block's pretty decent. I've never actually used one, and I'm pretty stoked to do so. It doesn't have like a super shine finish. It actually has machining marks. It actually has like directional grooves, and that's what the thermal paste will take up and fill in. Not having an exact like mirror finish block, I don't think is going to be that big of a deal. A lot of people make a big deal about it. I'm not necessarily sold on the fact that you have to have like a mirror finish block. I never have been. I've had no problem like lapping stuff over the years, and sometimes it'll help with thermal performance. Sometimes it won't necessarily. It just kind of depends on the cooler and how it's engineered. Being that this is Alphacool's part, they engineered it, they built it. Well, time will tell, because these are going to be going on our test bench so that we can compare it versus everything from a custom SwiftTech cooler we have. That's going to be coming up here real soon. We have their 360, the new 360 that uses the Mayhem's nano coolant in it. And we will also test it versus popular AIOs. Things like the Corsair 360 mil, things like the even Threadripper based blocks. If we can, as long as we can make this thing fit, we're going to test it on everything we can to see exactly what kind of performance you're getting, what kind of delta you can expect, and overall, what kind of overall experience a potential noob or novice user would have, because that's what's kind of important. I'll get this package off here before I continue talking so it doesn't sound crazy. That's what's important to me is novice users, because I love to see new people come into this hobby or come into this craft of PC building and Opening the availability for people to be able to do that is just paramount to me. I love to see new people come into it. I love to see people come in and enjoy themselves and get help building new PCs. I love to see people start to explore and try new stuff. This is definitely something that's important to me because I've grown up with PCs. I've grown up with the DIY culture, everything from customizing automobiles all the way to liquid cooling PCs and stuff like that. Even LN2, all that good stuff. This is something that is very important, near and dear to my heart, is to make sure that people have a really good experience. So even though if someone sends me, like they sent me this kit, doesn't matter. If it doesn't perform well, I'm damn well going to tell you guys that, because there's no reason for me to blow smoke, because it's not going to help, and all it's going to do is ruin my credibility. Now, this is kind of an interesting mounting setup. So the reservoir is basically designed to be able to be hung like this, which actually would work really well with that fractal, the fractal Metrify S2 we just looked at. So that's where this system actually on our test bench came from. But those slats that we saw for reservoir mounting, this would actually mount up perfectly fine with something like that. So this actually has their D5 based VPP 755. I believe this is the 3rd gen one, because over the years they've had different things, like different issues and whatnot, and they've resolved them with new revisions of pumps. And this guy is pretty nuts. I mean, this is not a super tall cylinder, so this means it would fit most cases. I do like that they didn't go crazy, because when you run a really big cylinder, it means you might actually impede the ability for people to use this kit if they have a smaller case. This one's small enough. It has a large, I think this might be a settle. Yeah, I think it's a settle base that the VPP 755 is screwed into down here. It is very, very well machined, very well finished. It has inlet and outlet on one side, and then it looks like it might have a drain port here at the bottom. I do like what they did as far as the like cavitation and the feed back into the pump. There's a center tube you'll see here, which has like open squares going all the way around the circumference of the top. Then it has a whole bunch of holes in the bottom. So basically, one is where it pulls fluid in, one is where it comes back. So basically, one is where it pulls it into the pump and sends it out through the loop, and one is where it comes back and basically sprays back in. I'm guessing the fluid comes back in through that center tube and then gets pulled down through the small little array of circular holes down at the bottom of the cylinder. This is actually really cool. I have not used a cylinder reservoir like this. I'm very interested to see if this is like an anti-cavitation method or something like that Alphacool has put into place. I'm going to lay this down here. So with that, this, I mean, oh wow, this is the Eissturm. It's EISSTURM, so I'm not sure if that means like ice, like storm, but it's Eissturm Tornado. This is the 240 millimeter version, so 60 mil thick radiator, cylinder reservoir, XPX block, 290-degree fittings. It's got like 8 regular straight fittings. It's got plenty of tube to run any loop. I believe this is, yeah, it's 3 meters, so it's like over 9 feet. It's got two of the Be Quiet Silent Wings fans. This is, I would say, probably one of their best options they could use, because these things work really well without being overly loud. And anyone who's done liquid cooling knows that one of the goals is to reduce like fan noise from a standard air cooling perspective. Having something like the Silent Wings means you're going to be able to eliminate a lot of that potential noise. That's obviously relative to what it's blowing through. Now it's blowing through this radiator. I haven't heard that yet, but we'll definitely be demonstrating that as we build these up on the bench and test other components. As I showed you before, if I've got it somewhere around here, which I don't think I do, actually I think it's on the other side of the table. I did show in my Instagram that there was, when I was first showing that we got this Praxis wet bench, I was like, hey guys, we've got some new Alphacool parts we're going to be adding to our test benches and whatnot. We do have a 360 rad. We also have the 360 AIO based units, which we'll be looking at in another video, kind of pulling apart, taking a look at. And then we'll do a follow-up video, just like we're going to do with this one. This is the introduction to the Eissturm Tornado. We are going to do a separate video showing how it's installed, how it performs, and relative performance to other components on the market, along with relative value, because that's one thing that's important. Is as good as this may be, this is something that if it's not a good value for how it performs, what's the point of getting it? So I'm going to go ahead and link down below where you can find this kit so you can actually research it yourself. And I'm going to go ahead and put on screen what the price is as of the time of making this video. Now, obviously prices fluctuate, so, don't be mad at me if it's $5 higher, or, be happy if it's $10 lower. I had no effect on that. It just happens to be where the market's at. But just take a look right there. You should see the price of what it is at the time of video on this. And I really hope you enjoyed this kind of coverage. If you do, give me a like, give me a sub. Let me know down in the comments what you think. What would you like to see more of? Would you like to see more AIO-based units? Would you like to see more custom liquid cooling? How would you like to see this tested? Would you like to see pushing the limits, like for instance, hooking this radiator to the CPU on like an 8700K and to the OC Lab Edition GPU, just to see how much capacity this can actually take, like max overclock on that and pushing the CPU? Let me know how you want to see it tested, and I'll do my best to fulfill as many of your requests as possible that actually seem fun and make sense for doing this. If you guys like this kind of stuff, once again, let me know. If there's something you don't like, if you're like, this is boring, I don't like to see unboxed stuff, let me know. I'll be happy to adjust accordingly. Or if enough people like it, I'll do this, and maybe you just kind of skip these kind of videos, what have you. I'll basically label these as overview videos so that you guys understand this is an overview looking at the parts, not necessarily the relative performance. Those will be like the review or performance analysis. So with that being said, I really appreciate you guys taking a look at my videos. I know you have a lot of options on YouTube for tech content. I appreciate you taking the time and spending the time with me. If you want to see more stuff, please join our social media and things like that so that you can see when we have new stuff, sneak peeks. Sometimes I'll even ask people questions on social media, like what do they want to see as far as content-wise. Feel free to dive in and let me know exactly what you think. Otherwise, once again, thank you for joining me, and you guys have a great day. If you like what you see here and you want to get the newest content from Bare Metal Tech right away, be sure to subscribe, tick the bell, go to our Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, give those a like, join the community, so that you will see not only the newest content going up, but also some behind the scenes as we release pictures of new stuff, or even some behind the scenes small video clips showing some of the bloopers, fun stuff we do here, along with the newest stuff we are playing with that'll be coming out in videos soon.